now, where does R1 go in this model? It's pretty obvious, right? Yeah, but we have to have this conversation just to make sure we're all on the same page. So S1 and R1 go together, right? S2 and R2 go together. S3 and R3 go together. S4 and R4 go together. So that's where those will be found. Now this one says unable, and unwilling, or insecure. Why did you hire that person? What does that mean? You hired somebody that's unable, unwilling, and insecure. Why did you hire that person? There's no way to get around it. Anybody you hire is going to be unable to do that job until they start doing it. They're going to be insecure to do that job until they start understanding it. And they're going to be unwilling. Doesn't mean they're not wanting to do it. Unwilling means that they're really kind of hesitant to make that step because they don't really know what they're doing and they're scared. They're going to make a mistake and you're going to fire them. And that's what that means. Okay? So it's not that they won't do it. They're unwilling, can't make me. It's that, man, if I goof up here, I want this job. So they're kind of unwilling and unsure about themselves, right? Okay, so now, can you imagine that if that person's there, it requires more of your time and effort and more of your control than if they're not there? Okay, so now you see the logic for it. You got to be more control oriented here, and you're not worried about relationship as much. You're trying to get them over that point. You don't have a relationship yet. How do you build a relationship when somebody's just there a day? You know, and so, but your goal is to get them through this box as quickly as possible. They could have been doing this for 20 years, but they haven't done it in your company, right? And if they've done it for 20 years, maybe that's only 2 days in that box, you know. But if they're fresh out of high school, maybe 3 years in that box. Okay, so R2 there, unable but willing and confident. They're unable, so why are they confident? And they're unable, so why are they willing? Kind of put yourself in the head of that person. They're the young person straight out of school, been there for 3 years. They think they've seen it all. They've seen everything that's standard and isn't out of the ordinary. So they think they've seen everything. They're getting full of themselves. They know how to teach other people how to do this now, right? So they're willing and confident, but they're still unable. Why are they unable? But what they've done is seen all the normal patterns of things that go on. Now, they haven't seen everything. They haven't been robbed before. They're in the front desk. They haven't been robbed before. That's a whole different level of competence. Okay, handling something like that. They've been in a restaurant. They've been working it, but they haven't seen anybody's choke. They haven't seen the emergency. So you haven't seen emergency. Haven't seen someone come in and talk to your face and tell you the absolute lie, but convince you it's not. They haven't had all the stripes on their back. I was a program manager at SAIC. We were trying to put together an expert system, and an expert system, in our case, was taking 9 different Westinghouse plants and creating a control room in software and in a room so that you could go in and you could say, well, if I have 10 people not show up today, where should I divide this workforce out in order to get the most throughput? Can you imagine that? So you have a whole bunch of machinery, a whole bunch of processes going on, and to optimize this whole throughput, it requires a certain number of people. Okay? So if you had 10 people calling sick, where are you going to divide those 10 people in order to get the best throughput? So that's kind of expert system. If somebody says, I want 100 more units today, how are you going to do that with your process? So an expert system was kind of putting together that scenario so that you can make the best decisions. What I had different companies working together to try to provide this. We're trying to provide this all on one computer, but we're in the process of consolidating this to one computer. So we had several different computers doing different things, and we'd feed information from computer to computer to get it all. Before I was ready, I presented this to the person who was making the decision at Westinghouse. And he already knew it worked, but I showed it to him point where it wasn't fully consolidated because my goal was to keep on schedule. Right? And my schedule said, my milestone was to show it to the person making the decision at this point. And so we showed it to him, but we had to show it to him on 3 to 4 different computers. And so he called me into his office. He said, Craig, you just got a stripe on your back. And I said, what do you mean? He says, your mentor, Bobby Henderson, he has all kinds of scars. He's like the silverback gorilla. He's been in all kinds of fights and all kinds of scraps. He says, you showed me something that wasn't ready. If you showed me it when it was ready, I would have been your biggest fan, and we got to show it to 20 more executives. And I would have sold it for you. He said, you wouldn't have had to said much. You'd show them how it worked, and I would have sold it. He says, now, because you didn't take the time to make it work and call, he said, what you should have done is say, give me another week. And because now, going into this, I got to stay in the back of the room, and you got to sell this to 20 executives, now 21, because you got to sell it to me. Okay? So that was, I was over here, but I wasn't here yet. Because I did not see everything, right? And I was still incompetent, although I was very confident. Does that make sense? I was fairly young. I had my straight out of school with my master's, and I thought I knew more than what I knew. But just those type of things will bring you over here and make you more valuable. You see something out of the ordinary, right? And you have the kind of a wisdom to look at. Now, the guy who's my mentor was already way down here, and he's already gone through 100 of those. And it's not until the people under you make the mistakes that they can even get here. So over here is Abel, very competent, but unwilling and insecure again. Can you imagine why that after that point I was more able, because I saw this big blow up, right? But now I'm insecure because it cost me. Can you see that? So this is part that doesn't make sense. Unable but willing and confident. Now you're able and you're unwilling and insecure. That doesn't make sense to everybody when you first see it. But with that little story, does it make more sense? Yeah. And so this is what I'm hearing you say. I'm going to restate it just so it'll be. I'm hearing you say that you can get to the point where you're really full of yourself. And you get to the point where you won't take direction from people above you who know more. And so little things like this is a natural part of growing and showing that you can learn more from other people. And that's kind of, I interpreted more to it than what you said, but is that kind of where you are? And so it kind of puts you in your place because you got to be in the point where you're green and growing. And if not, you think you know it all and you're not listening. Okay, that and did make you more valuable. Anybody else got any that's a very good insight. Now, see, the worst thing could have happened though for the company, for me, and everybody else, is to create a lid over that situation. I just made myself more valuable. And it turned out great. I mean, what I had to do is I had to work, 24/7 to make it turn out great. By the time the meeting came around. But we looked really good during the meeting, and if it wasn't for that little blip in the success, that we probably would have made ourselves look really bad. So that's a good point. Now over here, you're able, willing, and competent. So you can see how you get there. You've seen a bunch of these type of things, and now you got all this experience, right? And I've seen a lot of these things, but there's still things I have. I still think places where I'm over here. And that's the way everybody will be. You're not going to be there 100% all the time, no matter what you approach. I mean, if I try to learn something new, where am I? I'm over here again, right? And if you're not learning something new, you're not growing. I really love this model because it's so useful, and it's so much common sense in it, right? But you don't think about it until you approach it, right? Because normally, if you're like everybody else, you'll find some place you're really competent. I'm really good at forcing my way, and you'll live your whole life that way. And you'll mess up an organization. You'll tear it up. Or you'll say, everybody's so, they should be able to do their own thing. Because you're just as driven as me. Not everybody's driven like you. You know, not everybody's driven like other people. So you can't treat everybody like they're driven, because get a high school kid, and if they're confused, they don't get work done. If they're confused, they wait until somebody tells them what to do, right? So they use that as an excuse not to do anything.